Reunion. A feeling I'd never truly felt before in my life. Not properly, anyway. But seeing Glimmerlight come to my aid, not out of guilt for me, but out of a conscious decision to save some pony she cared about, was a defining moment for me. The raider had fallen. Her head exploded across the desks she had hidden in front of. Silence reigned, other than the tiny sound of a brass casing from Glimmer's round clink on the floor and roll away under a workbench. I felt my knees go weak. Hours of running through the horrid past and thick darkness finally began to catch up to me. The raiders had been the last straw before everything just finally said, "Yeah, that's enough." Exhausted, I fell to the side and slumped. Hey! Hey, Murky! I dropped right into her hooves, as Glimmerlight leapt forward to catch me, held me upright again, and began hugging me tightly. Not really knowing what else to take strength in, my own hooves grabbed hold of her as tightly as I could manage. Already I could feel myself tearing up again. She had come. She hadn't been lying. She had stuck to her promise, the first one any pony had ever kept for me. "It's all right. I found you. I'm here now." I thought I know. It's all right now. We won't let you get separated again. We? I wondered. Where was Brimstone anyway? Glimmerlight let go of me, ruffling my mane a little and helping me down off the desk. Shivering as my hooves landed on the raider's rapidly expanding blood puddle, we cantered away from the corpse. Nodding to the entrance, Glimmer put on as best a smile as she could. From the look in her eyes, I could see she was rather drawn out herself. "Oh, Brim! Got separated in the dark when we ran into one of Barb's scouting parties. I was going to locate him, but then I heard you down the hallway. Brim can take care of himself for a while. Better than when he's watching out for me. So, what's this find you got down here, Murky? I'm liking the look of this room, creepy skeletons notwithstanding." Biting my lip, I struggled to really know where to start. Sitting upon the floor, I told her about the story of the stable, about the peaceful situation twisted into a horrific interior war through nothing but fear and accidents, about the way they had died and what happened to the scientists afterwards. Oddly, I found myself not mentioning the shadow of the past that had been drifting around the stable. Ponies thought I was screwed in the brain enough as it was. As the recap ended, Glimmerlight simply sighed and shook her head. "The sad thing is, this isn't unusual. For all their strength, the ponies inside the stables were the fragile part. Back in the Rangers, we kept records of all discovered stables. It's unsettling to think how many failed because of internal issues with the residents. But all this?" She cast a hoof over all the workbenches. "This is unusual. Most ministries had their own internal bunkers and sublevels, so to see all this stuff in a stable tech shelter is pretty out of place, especially as... Oh my." Glimmer hopped up, trotting across to the workbenches. Confused, I followed, finding her lifting tool after tool before finally raising half a dozen of the orbs and immediately scanning through the attached terminal. Tilting my head to the side, I prodded one of them and looked up at her. "What are those things? Don't you own a bunch of them too?" "I do indeed, Murky. Have you never heard of memory orbs?" I shook my head, then nodded, then shook again. "Maybe. There's a lot of things I've seen or heard about, then just forgotten." Glimmer floated up one of the memory orbs, peering into its depths. "Basically, they are little orbs of magic that contain a living simulation of the past. Grab them in a magic field and whoosh! You're off to old Equestria. Ponies use them as diaries, means of remembering details, or even as proof of past events. The spell itself can create them if you know how, but most were just found from the old stocks made before the megaspells. Wonderful things, really. You can even extract memories permanently. So, see something you wish you hadn't? Just get rid of it. You'll maybe remember some vague concepts, maybe some feelings like an old dream, but the details that made you feel bad just disappear." The very idea made me shiver. To actually see into the past? I wasn't sure I liked that idea. Audio diaries had taken me to my wit's end in this place. If I were to actually see the events, I feared they might break me. Glimmer had begun to work on the adjoining terminal, casting the occasional curious glance at the memory orbs that floated in arcs around her while she worked. "If you really want to get into detail, memory orbs aren't just a series of pictures. See, ponies are all magical, unicorn or not. Earth ponies have that connection to the ground and their place in life. Pegasi have the sky and weather embedded in them. And every pony's magical signature is unique, like our DNA. Our what? DNA, Murky. The stuff that makes us who we are. Magical signature is part of our body and soul. Now, memory orbs contain an imprint of that signature, like a false copy of our own life and experience. That's why we see things from the creator's perspective when we watch them. Unable to really help it, I had my front hooves up on the workbench, tapping a lime green memory orb between them. What did it contain? Was it a good memory? How do you use them, Glimmer? The white unicorn chuckled, turning her head away from the frantically clicking terminal and tapping her horn lightly. Oh, of course. I let the orb roll away from me. Nothing for me here. Huh. Now that's interesting. Lifting my head, I moved to watch the terminal Glimmerlight was working on before witnessing my nemesis. Words. Without skipping a beat, Glimmerlight read it. Paper 52 on the residual effects of the memory orbs to their users. We have continued to work upon what Chief of Staff Aurora Star theorized a long time ago for training of our military. That is, the ability to pre-record situations within orbs to create experienced veterans before even going to war. This theory was proposed within days of the memory orb spell being approved and released to the unicorn public, but the effects simply did not stick. A user's magical signature could not correctly see it as true experience in the way genuine life could. Huh. She flicked a few more screens past. In the distance I began to hear faded noises, thumps and sharp cracks. What was going on above us? Apparently they succeeded. Listen to this. She coughed lightly. We brought Aurora's prototype spell with us. Apparently she shared her research with the Ministry of Peace under the watch of Surgeon General Dr. Weathervane for use as spell storage orbs. In the end, this was a breakthrough. When the medical staff figured out how to store pre-made medical spells within orbs, Aurora had a theory. If we could store spells, why not store a memory orb creation spell in the orb itself that activates upon the user, making them a temporary spell storage hub by storing it into their own magical signature? Wow. I was lost. Storing a memory orb inside an orb to create an orb inside a pony, using an orb to... Oh, goddesses, why did it have to be me to hear all this? Giggling, Glimmerlight patted my head as I laid it on the table before I got a headache. Simply put, Murky, they made orbs that would cast a spell on the pony, using it to imprint a spell into their own signature for a short period of time. I blinked, staring blankly. Glimmerlight rolled her eyes. Orbs that give unicorns new spells for a limited time. Oh, well, why didn't they just say so? I was beginning to think scientists just spoke in fancy terms to hide their ideas from other ponies. Glimmerlight moved away from the terminal, dragging a few orbs into her saddlebag before moving onwards to the large cupcake tray machine I'd seen earlier. Now in the light, I got a better look. It had one large central chamber with baking trays in it and a weird headset nearby. Seemingly just made of dull metal, it shone brighter from the series of gemstones of all colors embedded under the rim. Around the base I could see a series of bones. Now if I'm right, and when it comes to memory orbs I usually am, this would be where they got unicorns to transfer a memory of using said spell into a bunch of orbs for use by others, which means... She bucked a nearby cupboard, breaking the rusted lock on it, spilling open half a dozen small cases out. Almost squealing in delight, Glimmerlight lifted them with her magic and held them before her. Opening one, I could see a much brighter and almost unstable-looking memory orb within that pulsed with a bright red light. It reminded me eerily of Red-Eye. And here's the prototypes. Let's see, we have a shield spell. Handy. 3 healing spells. Very handy. Create a door spell. Well, not so handy. And... Oh! Yes! What is it? I shouted quickly, my voice raising. Could it be something to get us out? A teleport spell that would send us all right to Ten Pony Tower? Want it, need it spell! I've never been able to do this one! Oh, this is fantastic! Never again shall it be my round at the Roamer on break days with this little baby! Face hoofing. I could only nod in vague agreement as disappointment washed into my head. Sometimes Glimmerlight really confused me. All that caring bound up in one casual and self-admittedly shallow package. Oh, I could spend hours down here looking at all of this. Memory orb research, memory transfer theories, and spell enhancement orbs. So many to look at, to learn from. I left her to squee over the orbs, hearing her chattering to herself about the methods and means. How did she know so much about them anyway? Why did she own so many back at the mall? Shrugging to myself, I decided to have a look elsewhere. Only now was the fact that the shadow had helped me beginning to set in. That, or it had simply wanted to get at the raider who had looted its place of rest? Picking the room it had appeared from, I advanced towards it. The interior was little more than a basic office. Piercing through the fallen files and folders, I wasn't really looking for anything, rather just wanting to avoid Glimmerlight's fascination with the past and memory. Neither of them were particularly nice topics for me. Unfortunately, I could have chosen a better pastime. As I cast my pitbuck's light around the room, it fell upon the desk. A smashed terminal sat there, riddled with bullet holes that had passed all the way through to the metal wall behind it, where they had dented the thick material. The inevitable waited for me behind it. A mare, I thought. See enough skeletons and perhaps you might be able to not freak out at more. But finding just one little story left was always hard-hitting. She had been at her desk simply working on helping ponies to learn through memory orbs when Sculpt had rushed in amidst his rampage. Was this why the Spectre had chose this room? Shifting the stable-dweller clothing to one side with a hoof, apologizing profusely, I saw a small picture frame. Holding my spasmodic light closer, I got a good look. Suddenly everything made a lot of sense. A lovely older mare, ribbons in her mane and tail that now lay beneath me, stained and ripped. She was standing proudly beside a little pink filly riding her brand-new red scooter. I'd thought I was past this, that nothing could affect me after the hallway of death where an entire stable had been choked to death, that after witnessing corpse after corpse with shattered bones from bullets, I may have become accustomed to it. But little details, little memories. Murky? Glimmerlight was behind me, standing in the doorway. Not turning around, I held the picture frame in my hooves, just staring. Only peripherally did I remember that these were the same colors as ponies in the pictures upstairs. Shivering, I almost dropped it, while leaning sideways into the desk, feeling as miserable and lost as I ever had. Glimmer's hoof lay on my shoulder. Not everything in the past is bad, Murky. They had good times before it happened. They watched their world die. She saw her daughter killed. Does that invalidate everything that came before? Accept the past. Remember the good, and then just look to the future. Soaking wet around the eyes, I turned on her, standing up on all fours. I don't know how, all right? I've never had to look to the future. All I've ever done is to be reminded what I'm to do here and now all my life. A slave. You wonder why I hate the past so much? Turning, saw my cutie mark briefly, and knew just why. Because if I ever did properly comprehend how much of my life and potential have been wasted since I was born into this, I don't know how I'd feel. I tried to kill myself once. I don't want to do that. I terrified myself. Spluttering, I shook my head and mane furiously, trying to get my train of thought out of that road. Looking to the poor mare's remains, I just kept venting. Seeing other ponies like this, remnants and ghosts, it makes me think about my own life. Whether I'll have any pony who will ever look back on my skeleton and be able to find anything worth mentioning. If I'll ever be anything more than just another nameless figure in some history book's pages of how many slaves died. Her telekinesis dragged me back around to face her. Snapped from my sudden anger, I looked up to see her standing tall before me. A serious expression came over her, before eventually calming. Around her, whirling orbs of light flew in blurring circles, all colors of the rainbow. Listen to me, Murky, Glimmerlight advanced. You're afraid of the past. That I understand. I can be too. I was scared of coming down here to find you. Hell, I think even Brim was unnerved. That's normal. But do you really not know how to look back and find anything good? What about Little Pip's escape? What about the mare? Velvet's songs, the DJ helping you. Don't tell me none of that matters. She was right, but somehow none of those seemed to properly sink in whenever I tried to think of it. How happy had I been when I saw little Pip flying without wings. So perhaps it's going to take some pony to show you. The orbs span faster. Before one, a small pink one spun off and around the room before resting between us. Glimmerlight's head lowered, my mouth falling open. I shook my head. No, I don't want to look. I can't even view them. How do you intend? Sometimes I wonder what your special talent is from that mark, Murky. What in the past gave you it? Glimmerlight turned to the side, lifting her crimson ranger robes with a hoof to reveal her cutie mark. 3 memory orbs, pink, purple, and light blue. But mine is that I can help those who cannot see for themselves. Glimmer, I don't like the past. Please, don't. Don't worry, Murky. This isn't like before. Fear demanded I shrink away, but her voice kept me rooted on the orb rested against my forehead, and I felt consciousness rush from my body. Trust that memories have the power to help us.